Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So once again, we're going to be looking at some more examples of localizers vandalizing anime and manga. Now over the past couple of months, we've seen an increasing level of criticism being directed at localizers, and as they have faced more pressure, localizers have gotten more and more defensive to the point where the mask is starting to slip. They're starting to say the quiet parts out loud, and that's what we're going to see multiple times throughout this video. But we're going to start right here with a remaster of Tomb Raider, where Crystal Dynamics, the team behind it, has come out and made this very bold statement saying that they're condemning the offensive depictions of people and cultures rooted in racial and ethnic prejudices in Tomb Raider, and that stereotypes portrayed in that franchise are deeply harmful, inexcusable, and do not align with our values. Now you can see this didn't go over very well because they have almost as many quotes and comments as they do likes, but don't worry, to their defense would come another company, this time Compulsion Games, applauding them and saying this quote: "Many video games are a product of the times they were created in. As we look to recreate and remaster these stories for modern audiences, it's important to consider the implications of these harmful portrayals and do our part to rewrite new history, not repeat it. We applaud our peers at Crystal Dynamics for the reflections and corrections." And you can tell this is a very brave thing to say when you have the replies locked so people can't even reply to this main post. But as always, whenever you see a line about stories for modern audiences, you know you're about to read some absolute slop from people who have no respect for their target audience and their customers. But we see, once again, the quiet parts out loud. They are openly saying that they need to rewrite new history, that apparently the consumer is so stupid they can't separate fiction from reality, and bad things, bad themes, bad people in games and other media have to be reworked, because apparently if the dumb consumer sees it, they're going to think that's acceptable in real life. So we have to rewrite history in order for them to consume the product. It's so weird, and they're, again, just mask off. And another observation people have made is that the community manager of Compulsion Games is this Katie person who has said some very weird comments about Asian and white people, calling Asians white adjacent. Just another example of race being tied into things on social media and the conversation about games where it seems wildly inappropriate and just strange. But of course, this is Twitter where things like that will be applauded. But nonetheless, we're seeing a more direct version of this mask off with the localization dub of Lovely Complex. This is a big story that's come out with many twists and turns where we're going to see the people behind this dub openly sharing publicly their contempt for this product and openly bragging about the fact that they're subverting some of the messages contained within this franchise and their dub. But before we get into this, we know that the Lovely Complex dub writers were not cooking with their changes, but let's hear from someone who will help you cook, like the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Giga Chads at HelloFresh have returned to sponsor this video. Click the link in the description or use my code and get free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while subscription is active. Now, what is HelloFresh? It is a trusted meal delivery service featuring a large category of meal options for you to enjoy without the hassle of shopping for groceries. Look, you're busy. You have the latest seasonal waifu to simp over for your in, and the latest Rev banger to watch, and so on and so forth. You don't have time to go to the grocery store. HelloFresh cuts out the middleman and brings high-quality ingredients and recipes to your doorstep. I love HelloFresh because they offer not only delicious meals, but also high-protein and diet-conscious meal options for people like me who want to maximize their gains at the gym. It's a new year, so whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description or the pinned comment for all of the relevant information that you'll need. Now let's jump back into the content. Welcome back, guys. So we're going to begin with the top of the article here saying, a freelancing contractor who worked on the English dub for Lovely Complex released a post boasting about his contempt for the original show and all the changes they made. In a now deleted / privated post, you can find the archive here, YouTuber Brendan Blabber, I don't know if it's Blaber or Blabber, Blabber sounds funnier, Jello Apocalypse, explained his work on the series and his thought process behind the many changes he made to the anime series Lovely Complex in the dub from Studio or Sound Cadence Studios. So let's see, this is Jello Apocalypse, another example of a very popular YouTuber with a very positive reputation up until now, getting exposed as a really weird person. Because as we'll see with this document that is very long, there's a lot of very concerning things that he, alongside some of his other dub scriptwriters, did to this lovely complex dub. Now let's begin right here. So it says, firstly, Blabber was not the individual hired for the job. Instead, he was contracted by writer and voice actor Marissa Lenti to assist them, where he says, "Hey y'all, at various points over the last 2 years, my best pal Marissa and I were working on dubbing an old anime called Lovely Complex, or aka Love Com. You might have heard us whispering quietly about some kind of project in old streams. Well, this was it." And going forward, this dub was supposed to be an attempt to really a love project, something that they were supposed to be proud of, this Lee Connors, and something that was supposed to be a big win for the fan base of Lovely Complex. But unfortunately, Jello Apocalypse has a deep-seated hatred of this series and says that they have an open contempt for the source material. And throughout the post, Blabber attempts to justify his censorship and changes from the source material, citing transphobic tropes and his opinion that the main character is an actual psychopath and all-over useless freak. So it says right here, "It is quite unprofessional to openly shit-talk a property you've worked on in this industry. Lenti cannot express any opinions as they have an official relationship with Sound Cadence Studios, Discotek, and Toei Animation. I, however, Jello Apocalypse, was a freelancing contractor and do not think any of those things. I am not speaking for Lenti anywhere in this post. Who can say what Lenti thinks? I'm sure I don't know, but I will tell you what I think, and I think that Lovecom is a bad show about the main protagonist who's an actual psychopath and all-over useless freak." That's a deep contempt for the show that you're responsible for dubbing. I mean, honestly, if you don't like the character, that's too bad. It's not your job to judge a fictional character and try to clean up their act for the sake of your dub. Just create the dub and keep it as honest of a translation as possible. But going forward, so there's the biggest point of contention for the dub writers involves Psycho, a trans woman who's introduced early on in the series. Early on, the main character dislikes her, citing some vague preternatural awareness that she's trans. Rather than try and maintain the original script as closely as they could, Blabber and Lenti went on cutting things, changing context, and otherwise altering dialogue from the original translation. He even says that you can watch the English dub with subtitles on to listen to our edits in real time. That is something we have seen with people like Jamie Marchi and other localizers, basically taunting people to go and watch the dub versus the subtitle version and try to spot all the things that they changed. It's very, very shameless, and they feel comfortable posting these things publicly. It's insane. But here's the actual part of the post saying the Psycho introductory episode about Psycho's gender identity. So it's not like we could write it out entirely, but we changed a lot of things to take the edge off. Nobuku's initial dislike of Psycho is changed from, I don't know, I don't like her, my trans radar is going off, to being jealous there's another girl on campus and not wanting to lose out to a freshman. In the sub, Otani and Risa's end of episode reactions could generously be called confused, but they got the spirit about the whole thing. We rewrote those to be a lot more supportive of Psycho, especially Otani's dialogue, which made it pretty clear he was still kind of disgusted by her. So basically, this is another example of these dub writers trying to make sure that the stupid consumer won't get a bad lesson out of this, because God forbid there would be a character that's not a good person. You know, if you think this is a reflection of this character and that these comments makes them a bad person or a flawed person, what's the issue? They're not real. This is a fictional character. Who cares? Like, what's next? Are you going to go back and rewrite villains from different anime and manga because the reader might get a bad impression about what's morally good or bad in real life because they can't separate fiction and reality? This is so ridiculous. It's a bunch of pandering and virtue signaling that nobody's asking for. Just do the translation. and stop trying to demonize this franchise more than you already are with this dub right from the get-go. But going on, there's a lot more happening here. So what ends up happening is Blabber exposes what the industry is doing in regards to these changes, which amounts to nothing. And the publishers involved, this Discotek Media, Funimation, Crunchyroll, are allegedly encouraging localizers to do exactly what Blabber was just describing, and that is changing things the way they think is best. The way they think is best for a modern audience. And you can see this section right here where Blabber not only outs his own process, but also the process of these other companies and their localizers as well, saying, of note, most anime distributors do tend to ask that you don't advertise changes like making things less transphobic. This is because large swaths of the anime community are racist, sexist, transphobic, etc., and will descend upon companies' social media page for weeks for the strangest things. Discotek added a content warning on one of their discs and got flack for that, so they're understandably a little skittish now. Funny/Crunchy works like this too. Too long didn't read. Most anime distributors don't care if you make things nicer or more gay or more or add more representation. They just ask that you don't flaunt the changes or use buzzwords. If this is true, Blabber just exposed Crunchyroll and Funimation for essentially allowing free range to localizers to change things as they see fit, as long as they don't announce it and brag about it publicly. That should be extremely concerning to anyone who is consuming products from those companies. But moving forward, they would also throw Funimation and Crunchyroll under the bus again in this section where they say to save money on all the extra voices, most of the voices in this dub were grabbed in an unusual way. Usually companies that dub anime are working on more than one show at a time. If they have an actor in for show A and they have an extra time in a session, they may bring that actor to show B to voice some background extras. Because that actor is already there for another show and they're being paid the same amount of money for the same time slot, it makes sense to utilize them in multiple shows. Funimation/Crunchyroll also does this because it saves them a lot of time and money, which is a very weird thing to learn. Obviously, from a cost benefit, it makes sense for them, but for the product itself, does it really make sense to be shuffling around these voice actors? It kind of leads to the question of authenticity. Are we hearing the same consistent voices throughout franchises, or are these extras being brought in to save company money and record lines for series that they originally weren't cast for? It's a very strange thing. But going forward, here's another part of this article saying, the centerpiece of the post is when Blabber is sarcastically frustrated that their dub is this good because he feels that anyone who picks up the show and enjoys it will only do so because of the dub. When discussing his dub in the context of the show, he says, "We made it good. This show sucked." Yep, the mask is completely off. An open contempt for your own product that you're responsible for dubbing. I don't think when you hate your own product, you're going to come out with the best dub. It's going to be reflected in the changes because you have a disliking of the material itself. It's not going to turn out to a good dub. We all know that. But the English dub for Lovely Complex was published by Discotek Media, who we'll be talking about right now, because they would come out and make a statement. Not only with this Justin Savakis individual, who we will talk about in a minute, but Discotek Media on their official account said, this is our statement regarding a contractor who worked on the Lovely Complex English dub. This was made a few days after a lot of people started to discover that now deleted/privated blog post made by Blabber. And here is the statement. It says, "We are aware of the comments made by a contractor that worked on Lovely Complex. The English version was made with the supervision and approval of the show's original producers. Dubs commonly punch up comedy and smooth over rough patches so that the end product aligns with the show's intended audience and provokes the intended response. and there will always be shades of gray when adapting a work. Anyone expecting exact fealty to Japanese dialogue should be watching the subtitles, which Discotek has always presented with as little alteration as is possible when translating from a very different language. We are deeply disappointed at this individual's lack of professional discretion and will no longer be working with him in the future. We will continue to work on future projects with an eye towards satisfying as many fans as possible. Thank you for your continued support. So I think this is overall, if you took it for face value, is a pretty fair statement, and also the result people wanted, the result anime fans wanted, and that is actual punishment for this localizer and what they were doing. What they were doing was horribly unprofessional and not something anime fans wanted to see. So yes, this person suffered the consequences, but as I will say, take this with a grain of salt, because as it will turn out, I don't think what they said here is very sincere, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. But there was a lot of reaction to this by localizers and localizer supporters who were very nervous about the, possibility of consequences for bad work. This user saying, "Congrats to Jello Apocalypse for not only setting back online discussion about localization another decade or two when it's already an absolute tire fire, but also getting blacklisted by one of the few remaining independent anime companies in the West." And of course, another brave post locking the replies. But yes, they're basically mad not because of what Jello Apocalypse did. They're mad because it's proving the concerns of anime fans correct, because we're now hearing the quiet parts out loud. Here's another post saying, more localization controversy. My absolute best advice to new/aspiring translators in this current climate: find yourself a group chat of trusted friends and/or industry peers. Need a vent? Discord. Want to brag? Discord. Tweak the story? Soften some bigotry? Discord. So this localizer is saying, no, you should definitely subvert the messages of your localizations. Just make sure you do it in private and don't let the anime fans, the consumers, find out about it. That's how mask off these people are. It's insane. Here's another one from an infamous localizer supporter, one of Jamie Marchi, that localizer, one of her biggest supporters right here, saying, "So someone said something stupid and now the anti-localization crowd want to make a big deal out of it when it isn't. The statement says the English version was made with the supervision and approval of the show's original producers. That's all that matters here." Where this user would rightfully point out a direct quote from the post saying they literally removed the original mangaka from the English dub. In the English dub, there was supposed to be a cameo from the mangaka, and they cut that out because they didn't like it. They literally cut out the mangaka's cameo. These people, they just say shit that makes no sense. I can't believe you would make such a clearly disproven statement, but localizer supporters, that's kind of what's to be expected. But here's another one saying, actually F Brendan for filling out all the checkboxes of a localizer boogeyman by drying out his undies on the internet for all to see. Legitimately, F you are perpetuating the chud nonsense. Well, it's starting to look like the chud nonsense is a chud reality. And by the way, chud is just a word they use for anyone they dislike on the internet or anyone who would dare question these localizers and their unprofessional translations. But yes, again, they're angry because we're discovering that this is exactly what's happening, that these localizers are actively changing the messages and trying to hide it. You're just mad because people are finding out because Blabber was blabbering. But here is a very concerning turn of events pointed out by Scratchpoint here, saying Discotek has released another statement addressing the deletion of the previous one and asserts that they don't stand for censorship. Actions speak louder than words, so stay vigilant, but maybe this ordeal will make for more careful supervision in the future. So we're going to be talking about this Justin Savakis individual. He is a director and producer who has worked with Discotek. Here is his statement saying, for those wondering why an earlier statement about Lovely Complex was removed, we need to coordinate some stuff, BTS. We'll hopefully have more to say at a later date. For now, sorry, but that's the pro world for you. For those still side-eyeing us, we hear you and we understand, but honestly, look at us. We not only released the two of the most offensive anime ever made, Violence Jack and Angel Cop Uncut, we restored them from 35mm. You know what we stand for, and it sure ain't censorship. Now, of course, the side-eyeing is justified because after this post, if you look at his likes, it's filled with posts defending the localizers, not only in this situation, but in other situations as well, who are also trying to toss blame on other people, including anime fans, and make them out to be some kind of a boogeyman. Here's one of the likes, saying, localization concerns is Gamergate 2, and I'm really disappointed in how many people are feeding into this. So the comparison of valid criticism of localizers being likened to Gamergate is a huge cop-out, and trying to write off all these concerned anime fans as some kind of a set of boogeymen who are continuing the Gamergate legacy, which is a big talking point for a lot of these localizers who came out of that era. But nonetheless, things would get even worse because users are starting to discover that some of the supposed changes that were not included were actually included. And there's a whole list of these. You can find them on Twitter on various threads like this. But a lot of these changes are being pointed out on the Discotek subreddit, and those posts are getting taken down by mods. Not a very good look, especially when they're saying that they want to be transparent and they are against censorship. But anyways, it's another localizer situation. Unfortunate to see, but not unexpected. But as always, it's important to call this stuff out and bring attention to it. But that's going to do it for today's video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.